The world of James Bond has been shaken and stirred. The famous spy character has a new owner. Hi there, everyone. It's Jeff, and this is Plain English, episode number 758 on Monday, March 17th, 2025. Thanks for starting your week with us. Today is St. Patrick's Day. Maybe you were celebrating over the weekend. I'm 50% Irish, so I celebrated a little bit. Well, I exaggerated just a bit just now. James Bond doesn't really have a new owner. As you'll learn today, it's not that simple. But there has been a big change in the world of the famous British spy character with a license to kill. That's the topic of today's story. How did Amazon get control of one of the most famous characters in movie history? As you know, we talk about current events and trending topics here at Plain English, and we do that so you can get exposure to new words and new ideas in your new language. But it's not just the story. We also have lots of related practice activities at plainenglish.com. This is episode number 758, so all the additional resources are at plainenglish.com/758. Before we start today's story, I'd just like to remind you that the podcast is just one part of how we can help you upgrade your English skills. At plainenglish.com, you can make faster progress with active learning strategies. You can take quizzes, do activities, listen to the fast version of the audio, watch video workshops, practice what you learn, and even join a live call with JR and me. It's all about helping you build your skills to become a better, more confident English speaker. Sound good? Go to plainenglish.com to start your free 14-day trial today. Now, let's jump into today's story. Amazon has achieved something the character M never could. It has control over James Bond. To be clear, the tech behemoth has held the rights to distribute existing Bond movies since 2022. But now the company has the right to produce new movies with the famed British spy character. And it might further expand into series, spin-offs, crossover appearances with other characters, and special events. Here's the story of how Amazon came to control the Bond universe. James Bond is a character from spy novels by the British writer and journalist Ian Fleming. The protagonist is James Bond, a secret agent with a code name 007. The first two zeros in his code name mean that he has a license to kill. The first Bond book was called Casino Royale, and it came out in 1953. Readers enjoyed a new book in the Bond series every year until 1965. The last two books were published after the author's death. In all, there were 12 novels and 2 collections of short stories written by Ian Fleming. The series proved popular with readers, so in 1961, the author collaborated with 2 film producers to bring James Bond to the big screen. One of the producers had a memorable name. His name was Albert Broccoli. The original collaboration had an unusual structure. The film producers, including Broccoli, would have creative control over James Bond. But a movie studio, United Artists, would finance the films and distribute them. This is different from how movies are typically made. Here's how it normally works. A movie studio finances and produces a movie in-house. That means the studio buys a script, hires producers, and makes creative decisions about the movies that the studio will pay for and release. That makes sense, right? If a studio is going to pay to produce and distribute a big movie, they want control over what goes into the movie. But from the beginning, the Bond movies were different. The two independent producers had the right to make creative decisions. That means they decided when to make a new Bond movie, what the storyline should be, who the director should be, and, importantly, which actor should play the famous James Bond. Then, the movie studio would make the movie, do all the marketing, and get it into theaters. The two sides would split the profits from the movie. And that was more or less the arrangement that endured for decades, even as the people and the organizations involved changed. United Artists was bought by MGM Studios. Then, in 2022, MGM was bought by Amazon. So when Amazon obtained the rights to James Bond in this century, it only got the rights to show and distribute existing movies. But it didn't have the right to make new movies or make any creative decisions about the characters or the story. What about the nutritiously named Albert Broccoli? He died in 1996 and left his rights to his daughter, Barbara Broccoli. She managed the creative decisions about James Bond with her stepbrother, Michael Wilson. The Broccoli family saw themselves as protective stewards of the Bond franchise. They saw it like a family heirloom, something to be protected and passed down from generation to generation. They feared that if a movie studio had creative control, the character would be diluted. Think of all the times a good movie has come out, but soon after the world is drowning in content and everyone is sick of the character. Broccoli didn't want that to happen with James Bond. With Bond, she followed the golden rule of show business. Keep them wanting more. So the family prioritized quality over quantity. They only allowed a new Bond movie every few years. They didn't allow spin-offs. There are no Bond animations, no theme park rides, no crossover specials, no movies told from the perspective of a Bond villain. In other words, James Bond isn't like the DC Comics, Marvel, or Star Wars franchises. You can see where this is going. Amazon didn't get to be one of the world's biggest companies by being cautious and careful. Amazon, for all its strengths, is not a protective steward of anything. It bought MGM Studios thinking it could make a lot of money from James Bond. So the Broccoli family and Amazon were at an impasse. Amazon made no secret of its desire to bring James Bond into a new century, but it had no authority to do so. And Broccoli didn't trust Amazon. She worried that a computer algorithm would ruin the storied character that her family had developed and protected over decades. You could even say that Broccoli herself was playing Dr. No for a time, slowing down production of a new Bond project with Amazon. And so the most recent Bond movie was No Time to Die from 2021, and there is no script, no cast, and no plans for a new movie. It wasn't clear if the world would ever see another Bond movie. Well, that brings us to early 2025. Barbara Broccoli was 64, her stepbrother 84. Barbara had been involved in James Bond since she was a girl. And she and her stepbrother finally reached an agreement with Amazon. The Broccoli family would step aside and give creative control to Amazon. Now, the future of James Bond is with just one company. 60 years of family control has come to an end, and now James Bond is in the hands of a tech giant. What could that mean? Amazon's budget would allow it to produce more Bond stories more quickly. It might create a Bond universe with films about side characters or villains. There could be stories about other 00 agents, prequels, or even stories set in the future. Amazon may also use Bond to boost its streaming business with streaming exclusives in addition to major releases on the big screen. As for the story, Amazon might introduce modern themes that appeal to a new generation, with more diverse casting and modern geopolitical themes. Other ideas have been posed: theme park attractions, reality show competitions based on Bond, casino games, virtual reality experiences, and more. But it's really impossible to say. Amazon knows the Bond franchise is valuable. They may modernize the franchise without diluting it. And Amazon's reach may help new people discover Ian Fleming's character that he developed in 1953. I would not be the first person to point out that Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, really does look like a Bond villain. And almost immediately after Amazon acquired creative rights to Bond, Jeff Bezos tweeted a question: "Who do you pick as the next Bond?" So I guess this is how it's going to go. A super rich celebrity tech mogul is going to ask his adoring fans in a social media post who should play the next James Bond. This must be exactly what Barbara Broccoli was afraid of. I am not optimistic. I don't think Amazon will be able to help itself. I think they will dilute the brand and the character. It won't be the same, is my personal prediction. But that's okay. The original books are still in print. You can still watch the original movies. Maybe I'm too conservative with these things. I just like the originals, you know? I would have loved to play the Bond theme music or a clip from one of the movies here in the podcast, but I don't even want to think about the trouble I would get into if I did that. Think of the torture scene in the movie Casino Royale. That would be nothing compared to what would happen to me if I played Bond music on a podcast. So unfortunately, no Bond music or clips or even picture on this article. Depressingly, I had to use a generic picture from a museum for this article online. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this episode of Plain English, number 758, on Monday, March 17th, 2025. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Check out episode 30 to learn about St. Patrick's Day. PlainEnglish.com/30. That was one of the early ones. Remember, our theme for the month of March is cars. We'll be continuing that theme on Thursday and then again on Monday. The question we'll ask on Thursday is, what happened to all the self-driving cars we were promised? Don't miss it. See you then. Tell me if this has happened to you. You're speaking or writing in English, and then you just hit a wall. Like, you know what you want to say, you know it shouldn't be too hard, but you just don't have the tools to say it in English. Sometimes that happens because you don't know a vocabulary word, but more often it's because you don't have the tools to connect your thoughts and express more complex ideas. I'm talking about tools like ever since, barely any, despite, so much so, and many more. And these are pretty complicated tools. That's why we've made step-by-step video workshops about each of them. We call these workshops the Toolkit. With the Toolkit, you'll soon be able to express more of your great ideas in English. Just go to PlainEnglish.com and sign up for a free 14-day trial, and you'll unlock the full toolkit. Watch as many video workshops as you like. And best of all, you can practice using what you learn and get personal feedback from me. Go to PlainEnglish.com today to start your free 14-day trial.